Hello my brush lads, lasses, and everybody in between. My name is Tyler, and for today's Commander Deck Tech, I realized that I haven't done a good old-fashioned bizarre tribal build in quite a while. So we're going to look at a tribe that I've always wanted to play around with more. Rhinos. That's right. Helmed by GHIRED Conclave Exile, we're going to be building Naya Rhino Tribal. But you might be asking, Tyler, isn't there already a legendary rhino? What about Rune? And you would be right. But I think having red in our color identity is a stronger fit for the flavor versus having blue. And most of our creatures don't really care about Rune's flicker effect anyway, so I opted instead for GHIRED. Now let's get horny. GHIRED is a legendary 2/5 human shaman that casts for 2 red, green, white. When he enters the battlefield, we make a 4/4 green rhino creature token with trample, and whenever he attacks, we populate, which means that we make a copy of a creature token that we control. That token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking with GHIRED. But before we get into the meat of our forces, let's take a look at our non-rhino utility creatures, which consist of Archetype of Aggression, Brass Herald, Skin Shifter, and Tristani's Summoner. The archetype is here to ensure that we're able to crash with our rhinos by making sure that they all have trample, while also stripping trample from all of our opponent's creatures. Brass Herald is a lord that, upon entering the battlefield, has us reveal the top 4 cards of our library and add all creatures of the chosen type into our hand, while also giving them a blanket anthem of +1/+1. Skin Shifter is a 1/1 human shaman with the grossest name that can turn into a 4/4 trampling rhino if we need him to, though he can also take to the skies as a 2/2 flying bird or as a 0/8 plant as circumstances demand. Finally, Tristani's Summoner is a 1/1 elf shaman for a whopping 7 mana that upon entering the battlefield makes us a 2/2 white knight vigilance token, a 3/3 green centaur, and a 4/4 green rhino with trample. While we have plenty of physical rhinos in the deck, being able to make tokens of our 4/4 friends is also very important to our sub-strategy due to GHIRED's ability of multiplying the war unicorns being limited to just tokens. As for our rhinos themselves, they can be separated into 2 groups, the bipedal and humanoid rocks, and standard 4-legged rhinos. The rocks tend to offer more sophisticated strategies due to their sentience, while standard rhinos tend to be strictly battle-oriented. Let's start with those. For these, we have Charging Rhino, Cliffrunner Behemoth, Crash of Rhinos, Enraged Ceratok, Garruk's Warsteed, Gnarlback Rhino, Loyal Guardian, Rubbleback Rhino, Sanctuary Smasher, Snorting Gar, Stampeding Rhino, Thriving Rhino, and Thundering Ceratok. Our most basic level creatures from this group are the Crash of Rhinos, the Rubbleback Rhino, Garruk's Warsteed, and Stampeding Rhino, with the Crash and the Stampeding Rhino each only coming with trample, and the Rubbleback just having hexproof. The Warsteed comes with vigilance and can technically fetch Garruk's Savage Herald when it enters the battlefield, but we don't actually run Garruk's Savage Herald, so it's delegated to this lesser role. Charging Rhino can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, Enraged Ceratok can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, Gnarlback Rhino draws us a card when a spell we control targets it, Snorting Gar gets +2/+2 until end of turn when it becomes blocked, and Thundering Ceratok grants a blanket trample effect to all of our creatures until end of turn when it enters the battlefield. For our more nuanced rhinos, Cliffrunner Behemoth has haste if we control a red permanent, and a lifelink if we have a white one. Loyal Guardian puts +1/+1 counters on all of our creatures on each of our combat steps if we control GHIRED. Sanctuary Smasher is a first striker that can be cycled away to draw a card and put a first strike counter on another creature, and Thriving Rhino gives us 2 energy counters when it enters the battlefield and can use those counters when it attacks to give itself +1/+1 permanently as a counter. For the rocks half of our rhinos, we have Dauntless Escort, Mirror Sigil Sergeant, Rocks, Rocks Bodyguard, Rocks Brute, Rocks Charger, Rocks Maulers, Rocks Meditant, Rocks Oracle, Rocks Veteran, Rockcaster Platoon, Stonehorn Chanter, and Stonehorn Dignitary. Dividing things even further to simplify our effects, Dauntless Escort can sacrifice itself to give all of our creatures indestructible for the turn. Mirror Sigil Sergeant has Trample and no other abilities that matter to us at all. Rock's Brute is Rock's Brute. Rock's Meditant draws us a card when it enters the battlefield if we control a green permanent. Rock's Oracle just draws us a card when it enters the battlefield. And Stonehorn Dignitary makes an opponent skip their next combat phase when it enters the battlefield. Alright, look. I'm kind of seeing now that maybe Rune would have been a decent choice as a commander for this deck, but we're in too deep now. Moving on. Rocks can deal its combat damage as though it weren't blocked, like a form of Super Trample, and can regenerate for 2 and a green. Rock's Bodyguard and Rock's Charger each come with Exalted, meaning that when a creature attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 for each instance of Exalted on permanents we control. For individual effects, the Bodyguard gains us 3 life when it ETBs, and the Charger has Trample. Rock's Maulers also have Trample, as well as Renown too, meaning that if they deal combat damage to a player, and it isn't Renowned, they become Renowned and gain 2 +1/+1 counters. Rock's Veteran has Battle Cry, meaning it gives +1/+0 to each other attacking creature when it attacks itself, as well as can tap a creature an opponent controls when it attacks. Since Rhinos famously can't fly, we have Rockcaster Platoon, who can use 4 mana and a green to deal 2 damage to each player and each creature with flying. Our final Rhino, Stonehorn Chanter, can gain Vigilance and Lifelink until end of turn for 5 and a white. While these are our only Rhino creature cards, we also run a collection of spells that can make us more Rhino tokens and or populate the ones we already have. Crashing Footfalls and Horncaller's Chant each make 4/4 Trampling Rhino tokens, with the Chant also letting us populate after making one. Rootborn Defenses, Sundering Growth, Full Flowering, Wake the Reflections, Growing Ranks, and Song of the World Soul all come with the Populate ability, as well as each spell introducing its own added benefits. Once we've assembled our army of Rhinos, we need ways of boosting them all at once for massive chunks of damage. For mass anthems, we have Icon of Ancestry, Obelisk of Erd, Tribal Unity, Crown of Vigor, Garruk's Uprising, Street Riot, Ferocity of the Wilds, and Rally the Ranks, which all can provide temporary or permanent buffs to all of our horned murder horses. If we need to boost up one particular creature, we have such cards as Heirloom Blade, Stoneforge Masterwork, Armadillo Cloak, Cartouche of Strength, Gaia's Embrace, and Reins of the Vinesteed. Swiftfoot Boots also makes an appearance as a powerful form of protection for any threat that we need to keep safe, while cards like Path to Exile, GHIRED Belligerence, and Roar of the Crowd can be used to demolish one or more threats our opponents might have. Kindred Boon, albeit slow, can make our Rhinos indestructible. Kindred Charge can give us a temporary token army if we need to close out a game, and Bala Ged Recovery can return any key card to our hand from our grave, while also being a land in Bala Ged Sanctuary if we need that instead. Arcane Signet, Gruul Signet, Selesnya Signet, and Sol Ring also make it into the deck, helping us ramp into our massive playmakers. And speaking of mana, let's cover that mana base. Abandoned Outpost taps for a white, but can also tap and sacrifice itself to add 1 mana of any color if we're in a pinch. Ash Barrens, Blighted Woodland, Evolving Wilds, Myriad Landscape, and Naya Panorama can all be sacrificed or cycled in the case of the Barrens to either ramp or fix our mana, while Command Tower and Jungle Shrine can each tap for any of our colors. Gavany Township either taps for a colorless or can be paid into to put +1/+1 counters on all of our creatures. Arch of Orazca is a source of colorless mana, or a constant source of card draw once we gain the city's blessing by having 10 or more permanents. Redegard Stronghold enters taps for a green, and can sacrifice itself to put a +1/+1 counter on each of 2 separate creatures, while also giving them Vigilance and Lifelink until end of turn, albeit all at sorcery speed. Crumbling Vestige enters the battlefield tapped, but generates 1 mana of any color when it does enter the battlefield. After that, it just taps for a colorless. Deserts of the Indomitable and Fertile Thicket each enter tap and tap for a green, while the desert can be cycled away for 1 and a green, and the Thicket lets us search the top 5 cards of our library for a basic land to put on top of our library. And Field of Ruin can blow up any problem utility lands and replace them with basics. Top things off with 8 forests, 6 mountains, and 7 plains, and we are ready to go! Thank you for joining me on this very fun tribal deck tech. What tribes would you like to see built in the future? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to leave a like and throw a sub our way, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace!